If anyone would like to know, I put on my Stark Industries sweatshirt for this. Do we love it? Do we love it? Sorry. Hello. How's everybody? Welcome back to my channel. This feels very professional. I have a tripod now and a new microphone. Don't know how this is gonna work out because really haven't tried out the microphone that much. So we're just gonna see how this goes. I have a very soft-spoken voice, so whenever I'm in frame, I have to be really close to the camera for you to hear me. But anyways, this is not the whole point of what I'm doing. It is January 1st of 2025. That's kind of insane. And today I will be doing every book that I read in 2024. I don't know if you can see, but behind me there is some books that I have read this year, and I wanted to just discuss them and tell you which ones are my favorite and my stats and etc. So let's get into it. I did go ahead and move my microphone. If it bothers anyone, please let me know, but this is just how I will be doing it for right now in this video. Let's get into some statistics. I read a total of 37 books this year, and if you know me, that's actually really good because last year I only read 20 books. My best year of reading was 46 books, and that was 2022. So it kind of got out of my slump, and for me having a full-time job and going to school full-time, I think 36 books is actually pretty good. I read a total of 12,252 pages. My shortest book was 92 pages, which was Warriors, like this manga, and it was 92 pages. And my longest book was 757 pages, which was A Court of Silver Flames. The average book length in 2024 was 331 pages. My most shelved was A Court of Mist and Fury, and my least shelved was the same book, the manga Warriors book. My average rating for 2024 is a 3.9, which is, I feel like, is pretty good. I feel like overall I had a good reading year. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm gonna go chronologically. I love going chronologically. I love knowing every single book everyone read each month. I love knowing what you chose to decide to read next after a book. I know a lot of people do monthly reading wrap-ups, and I don't do that, so I feel like this is just the best way for me. But even if YouTubers do a monthly reading wrap-up, I still think I would prefer watching someone explain what they read chronologically in a year. But that's just my opinion. I did write down, I have my little notebook here, and I wrote down what I read every single month too, like how many books I read every single month. So we're gonna look at that as well as the rating for each book. The first book I read in 2024 was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. We're gonna get into this a little later, but let's just say I adored this book. I love this book so much. I did not rate it though because I don't rate memoirs, because I don't feel like I should be rating someone's personal life and personal experience. It just feels kind of weird for me. I also wrote down the date that I read that. So I read this really quickly. I read this from the 6th, January 6th to the 9th. And I read 5 books in January. If it takes me less than a week to read a book, most likely that book was pretty good. The next book I read was Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the 3rd book in the Knockmount series, and it follows Lucian and what's her name? Salome. And I feel like we had a lot of a build-up going into this book, and it just kind of fell through for me. Like, I feel like there was so much build-up. Like, they started off as friends and then became enemies, and then from enemies to lovers, basically. I rated this book 3.75. I did enjoy it. I remember enjoying reading it. There were some parts where I'm like, this is going really slow. My expectations were just really high for this, and it didn't reach it. So I think that's where the disappointment comes from. But fun read either way. I finished a series and I read them all from the library. I am on my Warrior Cats reread. I read them when I was like 10 through 12 years old. I read them. And I was in a slump last year, like the whole entire year, and I just read them and I had fun with it. And it's interesting to go back into this like little fantasy kid book. So I decided to do that. Obviously I got them all from the library, so don't have physical copies with me. But the first book in the second Warrior series books is Midnight, The New Prophecy, and I rated this book a solid 3 stars. Read this from the 11th through the 15th. The next book I read was the second book in the series, which was a 3.5 stars. I remember enjoying this one a lot more than the first one. I feel like the first series will always be my favorite. Like, the emotions tugs at me, and like the start of this new world, just it doesn't compare. But it was fun to read the second series. 3.5 is not bad. I enjoyed it. Got annoyed at some points and kind of bored, honestly, but whatever. I read that from the 16th to the 19th. They're also really quick reads. I'm not gonna talk too much about this series just because I feel like a lot of people are not really gonna care, because I don't think anyone's gonna read this series unless you read them when you were younger. The next book I read You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hagel from the 15th to the 28th. It did take me, as you can tell, a while to get through this book. I'm pretty sure it's like a second chance romance where they're fiancés, but they fall out of love, and then this is them kind of rediscovering their love for each other. I'm not gonna lie, didn't love this book. Most of it I was really bored, and I literally, in my review, I just wrote solid 3 stars. I didn't hate it. There were some cute scenes. The miscommunication in this book just really pissed me off. And I felt like if you guys are fiancés, shouldn't you know how you feel about each other at this point? Like, shouldn't you know certain stuff and the reasoning behind certain actions are at this point? I guess not. So it's a total of 5 books read in January. In February, I only read 1 book, and this is kind of my slump. Like, for some reason, I'll read a lot in 1 month and then slump out for the next 3. But February, I read 1 book, and that was the 2nd through the 5th, and I read Dawn Warriors. Let me see how much I rated it. I rated this a 4 stars, so I really enjoyed this one apparently. I had fun, more fun than the other ones, and they finally found like their home, which I feel like journeys just don't fascinate me. I feel like they went on this whole journey thing, like traveling this world and finding stuff out, and to me that's not really interesting. Like, I'd rather them be where they are and seeing the characters that I love instead of going on this little travel journey. Anyway, that concludes February. I was also going through a breakup at this point, so that's also where the slump kind of came from. In March, I read 1 book, Starlight Warriors, the 4th book in the series, and I read this through the 7th through the 10th. So I read them really quickly actually, which is why I love them. And I gave this one a 3.75. I enjoyed this one. And this is where all these clans have arrived at their new home because their old home was destroyed by humans. That was really fun to kind of get into and discover how things are going to work in their new home. I love me some Dr. Pepper. Okay. And then the next books we're gonna get into, I'm really excited for, because I discovered a new author this year. Not discovered, but I found a new favorite author, because all her books that I read so far have been hits. So I'm excited to talk about this new book. The first book that I read in April, I only read 1 book. I started this the 27th of March and I ended it on the 2nd of April, and that is Love Theoretically. I rated this book a 4.75. I loved everything about this book. I loved Elsie. She is me. Like, I'm such a people pleaser, and she is such a people pleaser, and it follows like academics and academia and STEM and women in STEM. I love her settings. I love academic settings, and you don't find that much in books, and I just found this one so fascinating. Like, I love Jack. Like, they're kind of enemies to lovers, but let's be for real, Jack never felt like Elsie was an enemy. But anyway, can I just I wish I annotated it, but there's this part where she says, like, it's so difficult to be perfect, to be on all the time, because you have to be. And I'm like, I relate to it so much. And I just love her and the way she thinks. I just resonate with her so much. So I give this one a 4.75. A lot of people say that her books are copy and pasted, but you know what? I eat it up. I don't care. I don't care. And I also love her writing. Like, we'll get into the next one soon, but that's that. In May, I read a total of 7 books. The first 4 books, the first 5 books that I read in April were actually all novellas. Like, I finally read the Mindfuck series, and I think I would rate it a 4 stars. Like, the whole series in general, they're all really like novellas, but all of the novellas are like 150 pages long, so it's like a 600 page books if you really think about it. The first one I rated 3 stars. The second one I rated 4 stars. The third one I rated 4 stars. The fourth one I rated 4 stars. And fifth one I rated 4 stars. They were also quick. I started the 8th and I finished it by the 11th. To read a 600 page book, I think that's really impressive. Like, I really loved it. There's a lot of graphic things in this book, so I would recommend to read the trigger warnings. It's like my first sort of dark romance, which I feel like I really enjoyed. Wasn't my favorite at times because of how graphic it was, but the romance was really good. Londa Myers, she did no wrong. She did nothing wrong. Sorry. She did nothing wrong. If you like dark romances or want to start dark romances, I feel like this is a pretty good book. And then I started something else. I think in 2021 or 2022, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses. I liked it, but it did not live up to the hype, so I was scared to jump back into it. A year later, I decided to jump back into it. They are out of order. Let's not talk about it. But yeah, I jumped back into it. Let me just say, I'm pretty happy I did. Of course, I read Aquamoth, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I don't really feel like I should have to explain this because everyone knows what this series is. But I read this from the 14th to the 21st. I think reading this just makes you feel so mystical, and I don't know how to explain it other than that. Reading her writing, it just feels like fantasy, if that makes any sense. Like, the way she writes about winter and summer and spring and the magic and the fairies, and it's just so mystical and magical, and I really enjoyed her writing. It was really easy to get into. Here is the thing though, I did not rate this 5 stars. I know this is everyone's favorite in the series, but I felt it was a little slow. Don't even get me wrong, I rated this 4.5 stars, like especially the ending had me shook, but I felt it was a little slow, and the romance, I know everyone raves about the romance and I really enjoyed it, but I've noticed that I really love the plot of this. Like, I don't know what it is, and I love the romance too, but it took me a second to like really truly connect and love these characters, and I didn't even realize how hard I was connecting to these characters until I got to the last 100 pages, and then I was like, oh my god, I'm so stressed, I'm so worried, I couldn't put it down. Like, like what's gonna happen. And then at the end of this, I knew I immediately wanted to jump back into this world. So, and after I read series, I feel like it takes me a while to get back into it, just because, I don't know, after I finish a book in a series, I want to do something else and then jump back in. I don't know why I do that, but I do that. I did immediately go into this. This was part of my trying to find a 5-star read, the first 5-star read of 2024. I read this from the 24th to the 28th. For this thick of a book, 700-page book, I read this in 4 days. Super proud of myself. And it was also because of how much I love this book. Going in from the second book in this series, going into this book, I kind of already knew it was going to be a 5 stars. The feeling that it gave me at the end of Akhmoth, going into Agawar, I was like, I immediately got the same exact feelings throughout the whole entire thing. And I kind of just knew it. I knew it. And I did. And I rated this a 5 stars. This is my favorite book in the series. I love this book so much. The politics, the High Lord meeting, the romance, the war, like all of it. How they were defending each other, like the found family aspect in this book was just so top tier. This is a 6-star book for me. This is a 6-star book. Like, this is one of my favorite books of all time now. I don't know what it was about this book, but I loved every single second of it, and I was not bored once during this book. Okay, I was not bored, not one. And this 700-page book was not bored once. If you want to know more of my thoughts, I would recommend going back to my finding a 5-star book, which I guess that's kind of spoils it, but whatever. I love this book, guys. So good. Okay, and then that concludes May. I don't know if I said May, but that concludes May, and we're going into June. In June, I only read one book from the 5th to the 7th, and that is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is one of my 5-star reads for 2024. I love this book so much. Please also listen to the audiobook of this. It's so good. I was going in between like the audiobook and the physical copy. I loved I did not see the ending coming. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see it. This is basically just about this character where Kit arrives at the Hope family's house. Supposedly Lenora Hope hung her sister and killed her whole entire family, and she is now living there. It's kind of like a maid for them. I haven't read much thrillers, but this is one of my favorite thrillers that I've read so far. July, I read one book, and that is The Infinity Between Us by Ennis Perkins. Do you guys know how long it took me to get through this? It took me a long time. I started reading this the 1st of September of 2023, and then I picked it back up in July, and I finished this July 12th of 2024. Rated this 3 stars. It was a good beachy read. I didn't really connect to, I didn't feel the chemistry between the two main characters. But if you're looking for a beachy read, I would read it. It's pretty good. It's really short, so I think that's also why I didn't connect too much to the characters, but I don't know. Yeah, it's under 300 pages. Now we're going into August. So in August, I read 4 books, and the first book that I read from 26th of July to August 1st is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And do you want to guess what I rated this? 5 stars. This is my third 5-star read of 2024. Guys, I don't know what it was about this, but the banter in Adam. First of all, Adam, I was in love with him. If I could find a man, I would want him. If I could have any man in the world, Just kidding. I feel like I have a lot of book boyfriends, but he would be one that I would consider because he's just so good. This academia and this is just, she does banter like no other, and the yearning and the jealousy and fake dating, like everything about this. I love fake dating when it's done right. When fake dating is done right, it is one of the best tropes ever. Like, if you want a fake dating with a little bit of STEM academia environment, please read this book. I know it was so hyped like in 2021, but it was so hyped for a reason. I didn't know what I was gonna, like, I didn't think it was gonna live up to the hype, if I'm being completely honest. Like, it took me forever to read this for a reason, and I thought I was never gonna read this, but I did, and I'm so glad that I did. I read this so quick too. Like, I didn't want to stop. Like, once I got through halfway, I did not want to stop reading. Like, it was just a book that I feel like I could not put down, but I had to because I had to go to work. The next book that I read, which I started July 29th, and then I finished it on the 2nd of August, was A Night by Elie Wiesel. Guys, I don't know if you can tell about my annotation on this, but I annotated so much. Like, I read this book in my sophomore year English class, and it stuck with me ever since, and I've been wanting to reread this at some point. I just think it's so heartbreaking. Like, it's such a heartbreaking story. I think you have to be one of the toughest person on the planet to endure what he endured. And the writing in this is so beautiful. Like, it's so beautiful. I'm going to read a quote, and it is, "Before concluding this introduction, I believe it is important to emphasize how strongly I feel that books, just like people, have a destiny. Some invite sorrow, others joy, some both." I think that is the best quote to sort of emphasize the love of books we all have, especially if you're watching this video. I feel like we all have this passion for books that I feel like he just emphasized why we have such a passion for them. Let me read another one. Okay, this book is where like I really started, like this part is where I really started to like really literally analyze this book, which is, one person was placed in charge of every car. If someone managed to escape, that person would be shot. And I sort of wrote that they used their humanity against them. They used their humanity against them. Like, I wrote that, you know, they used the humanity against them. Like, it's just unbelievable that there are ways that people kind of manipulate, because there is humanity in this world. And some people just use that against people. And it's just really sad. Anyways, I really recommend everyone read this book. It's about a real life testimony of Elie Wiesel and his story in the concentration camps during World War II. I didn't read that, obviously, but it would be like it would be. It's just so good. Okay. The next book that I read, which I'm not going to talk about too much because it should be in a video that I have already uploaded, which is the one previous to this one, which was reading Happy Place. I read Happy Place in August. I rated this book 4 stars. And then the next book that I read in August from the 16th to the 29th is Twilight Warriors, which is the 5th book in this series, and I rated this a 4.25. I wrote that I was entertained the whole time. The next book that I read after that, which we go into September, but September was a really good reading month. I read 7 books that month, and the first book is Sunset, which is the last book in the New Prophecy series, and I rated that a 4.10. Really specific, but I really liked how it kind of definitely dived more into the plot. I feel like it wrapped up too quick though. I feel like there was a whole lot of nothing in the series for it to end really quickly, and like they try to wrap up everything in like 50 pages. And then after that, I have a physical copy of this. I don't know where it is though, so I'm sorry. You won't be seeing that. I read this in one day. It's literally a manga, The Warrior's Return, and it's about this character that was lost and how he was able to find his way back to the clan. That's what it's called. I love these books. I rated them all like 3 stars. It wasn't groundbreaking or anything. I just really wanted to see how a character that I really loved was found again and returned home. One of them actually rated 4 stars. The first book. Oh, actually, I rated these all 4 stars. Well, one of them I rated 3 stars, but it's like quick read. Don't really think about it really often ever. I don't think about it honestly ever. The next book, which I read from the 30th of August to 18th of September, which was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. If you want my thoughts on this, this is also in the previous video to this, which is Reading Booktuber's 5-star reads. And yeah, I did change my rating. Unfortunately, in the video I said I rated this a 4 stars, but I'm sticking to a solid 3. I think I was just trying to be nice in that video. It's not that I was trying to, I just unconsciously was trying to. And every time I think about this book, I just think about how much I really didn't like the writing, and I just think that distracted it from everything. I'm sorry, I really did not like the writing. It was too many sentences that they all ended sounding the same, which I forget what it's called every single time I think about it. It starts with an A, I think, but there were just too many sentences like that, and it really pissed me off. Sorry. 3 stars, but I'm not gonna hate on anyone that likes it, because I hate when people hate on anybody. That's why I don't like talking about like books that I disliked, because it's like people are gonna like it, just let them like what they like. Anyways, the next book that I read in September was from the 18th to the 26th, and that was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I realized that I really love Riley Sager's writing, and I loved his plot twist. I haven't gotten his plot twist yet, and this is the second book that I read by him. I rated this a 4 stars. It's kind of paranormal-ish. Some stuff I feel like he didn't really explain. 4 stars. It's obviously about a house. This family fled a house in the middle of the night, and then his dad made a fortune out of writing about this book and having a book on this house. And then the daughter eventually the dad dies, and the daughter, now grown up, eventually goes back to the house to see if the book was true or not. And we follow sort of that story, as well as excerpts from the book that her father wrote. 4 stars, really good. The last book that I read in September from the 26th to the 29th is a book that I feel like I hope I did not take too long talking about, because I really love this book, which was I'm Glad My Mom Died. I reread this the second time in a year, but mostly I did that because I took psychology last semester, and I had to write sort of like a case study on someone, and I chose Jennette McCurdy. I knew I loved this book when I first read it. When I was reading that book at the beginning of 2024, I realized how much like psychological things were going on, and how manipulative her mother was, and all these little tiny things that Jennette would mention in the book that she would eventually come to like wrap up later on, and how that ties back into her own psychological problems. And I just thought this was like the perfect person to choose for my paper, which it ended up being right, because do we see, like, guys, these are all the tabs that I did during like reading this for the second time. Like, it was so much. I went ham. Like, every other page there is something that I wanted to tie into with my paper. Like, let's just look at this, okay? My dead soul's smile spreads across my face, and I look in the cameras while their mom apologizes 15 times for not knowing how to to operate it. Oh, there's just so many things. Okay, I love this book. And I think this was a very therapeutic way of sort of sharing her story. And I think she's so strong and so resilient. And I'm so sorry she had to go through all this. But she so beautifully put it into words on how she felt about everything. She really demonstrated that you can be strong for yourself and you can break through. I just think it was such a powerful story. And then October, we're getting into October. I read 4 books in October, and the first book I read was Edgewater Frost's Starlight. So fun. I love this book. I gave it a 5 stars. I know it's like, you give a novella 5 stars. I enjoyed every second of this, and I would reread this a billion times. I'm just so happy they were happy, and every scene I was like, it was melting my heart. I had to give it a 5 stars. The next book I read in October, from the 5th to the 18th, this chunk of a book, A Crate of Silver and Flames. I also gave this 5 stars. I know some people are iffy about Nesta. I love her. I'm sorry, and I'm an older sibling. I love my siblings, and I would never put my sister through the same thing that she put her sister through. But her character development and the anger she felt, it was just so... I relate to her with the anger, and I just love her. I'm sorry. You just have to... You either hate her or you love her, and I happen to be the person that really loved her. So, 5 stars. I'm excited for what's to come with the series. The next books I have like the physical copies of, but it's a lot of work to get out. My house flooded, so all of my books are stored and because I haven't gotten a bookshelf yet. So I don't really feel like getting it out, and they're actually really... I love those copies, so I just don't want to ruin them. Sorry. But in October, I read from the 21st to the 25th, I read Addicted to You, 4 stars. In 2022, I did a 2022 wrap-up, and most of them are in my wrap-up. So, loved it. I feel like a lot of people know what this is about, but this is one of my favorite series of all time, and I have never finished it. I know that's crazy for me to say, like, this is your favorite series, but you haven't even finished it. Yes, I don't feel like it's necessary to finish it, just because you kind of established everything by the 8th book, because that's where I stopped. I also wanted to prolong the feeling of the series. I never wanted to end, so I generally have not ended it. Now that it's been like almost 2 years since I read this series, I'm like, I'm just gonna restart, because there's no way I'm gonna remember everything by the 8th and 10th book. So I'm just restarting the series. It's about a sex addict and an alcoholic and the sisters, and it's really just very character driven, and I love all of them. And then from the 25th to the 31st, I read Ricochet, the second book in the Addicted Calloway Sister series. That one's a 5 star. I love that book so much. November, I read 2 books, and I read that from the 4th to 28th. 5 stars. Love that book so much. Okay, and this is where I start getting into a new series, which finally, because this book has been on my TBR since I first started reading in 2021. I'm pretty sure I got this maybe in 2022, like early 2022. So it's been like 3 years on my TBR, my physical TBR. That's horrible. I finally read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I rated this book a 4 stars. Listen, guys, the hate that this book gets, and it's not as good as Six of Crows, I say read this. I think the world building is I'm probably going to go into Six of Crows and really understand the world building and not let that get in the way of the first half of Six of Crows. Do you know what I mean? I really enjoyed it. I read this book in 2 days. Like, I started it the 28th and I finished it on the 30th. Like, that's the fastest I've gotten through it. I also was craving a fantasy, so that might also have something to do with it, but I think in general I was really interested in this book. After that, in December, I read this on my Kindle Unlimited, and it is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I rated this a 3.5. The writing kind of put me off a little some at times. Like some points it was really cringy, so that's why it's not like a higher rating. I feel like we got the plot twist like halfway through the book, and I kind of saw it coming, but it was entertaining and it was thrilling at times. I really liked the story, so it was fun to read. That's why it's not like a horrible rating, but definitely not one of my favorite thrillers I've read. The second book that I read in December, which I don't know if I said we were in December, but we are in December, and I read 3 books in December, so we're getting towards the end. And I read that from the 28th of January. Wait. Oh yeah, I started this early on in the year, but I finished this on the 18th of December. I was really busy beginning of December, so that's why I didn't read as much. But I read Travis by Mia Sheridan. I was so skeptical of this book. Like I had no hopes for this. I just heard so many negative reviews of this book, and I love Archer. Archer is one of my favorite stand-alones of all time. I had no hopes for it, and it pleasantly surprised me. This book does not deserve the hate it gets. I loved this book, and I don't know if this is because my expectations were so low that I can't stop thinking about it. The chemistry between these two characters, the yearning, the pining. I don't know if Mia Sheridan, I don't know what she does, but she writes like she can write chemistry. Like I can feel it. I can't even stop thinking about Travis and Haven. Like I loved their story so much. Please give it a try. Don't have your high expectations, but I say try. Like if this has been on your shelf, read it. Okay, I enjoyed it so much, and the small town aspect I love. So I rated this a 4 stars. It's not a 5 stars or anything, but it's just one of these books that my expectations were so low, and they so highly exceeded my expectations that I can't stop thinking about it. And whenever 2 characters' chemistry is really good, I won't stop thinking about those 2 characters. Hated Travis in the beginning though. I hated him in the beginning. I still hated him, but he kind of redeemed himself. The last book that I read in 2024, Sage and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I have not finished the series yet, and I rated this book a 3.25. So the reason why this rating is kind of low for me is because I feel like a lot of nothing was happening, and a lot of things that were happening kind of just annoyed me. I think we fell off a lot because it felt kind of high stakes, but at the same time we were getting nowhere. And as I said, the characters kind of annoyed me. So we'll see how it ends, and I am going to finish the series, but I think the second book kind of just really fell off there. Don't really know what happened, but I still wouldn't discourage you from reading it. Okay, yes. So let me go back to Travis just for a second, because I figured I found my notes about it. So basically, I said that Mia Sheridan has a way of creating chemistry between 2 characters that you wouldn't think would have much in the beginning. She writes it well and creates longing between characters that I search for in a romance. And I feel like I'm the first one to say this, that I found at the end, which I feel like no one is talking about, but I personally love Archer's Voice, so I feel like a continuation of this series, or like these standalone, I would love. Basically, there's a specific scene at the end that makes me think that we will get more books about the twins, Archer's twin sons in the book, which would be interesting to read, because if you know about Archer's Voice, it all starts off with 2 twin brothers falling for the same girl. And now there's 2 twin brothers that you kind of see this scene where they kind of look like they're in love with the same girl, and I feel like that'd be really interesting to see. And if she does do that, come back to me, because I called it first. I don't know if anyone else said that, but I haven't heard no one talking about it, so I called it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. that is it for all the books that I read in 2024. I hope you all enjoyed this. This took me a very, very long time, and honestly was not expecting it to take that long. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!